we were on the air when it happened. I wasn't in favor of it. I was surprised by it. But to me, once it's done, I have to at least have the stones to step back and go, well, now let's wait and see if they were right. So, what'd you think of the draft?
I mean, a little bit of a head scratcher, but the more you go through it, and I read the comments from John and Kyle after the draft, I read the full transcript, and looking more at the Stribling pick in particular, John Lynch said that he's one of the 16 gold helmet guys, and they highlighted 16 players that they absolutely had to have, and they were first-round graded players, and Stribling was one of them. So they were able to move back and get him in the second round. And reading more about the way that went, and I was looking at Dane Brugler, who's one of these great draft analysts.
And he's smart.
He's really smart.
No shade at Dane, but go ahead.
No, but he told the whole story about the Stribling rise, where most scouts had him as a high fourth, a low third, but late in the draft process, more and more teams were trying to get to him, and Stribling ran out of time to get all these visits in, and scouts started to love his tape, and so he became a second-round graded guy toward the last minute of the draft. And so it's not that much of a reach, and I know you hate that word, but it didn't seem like a reach to take him there. And my whole thing about reach is, if you are a team and you like a player, then draft the guy.
Take the guy.
It's not a reach.
Yeah.
It's only a reach if he turns out to stink.
Again, I don't mind any opinion. I don't mind really any word. Just understand what its origin is. The word reach simply means it didn't fit with some website that you read. That's it. And I have no problem if that's the way you want to play this. None. You have everybody. In fact, I'd love to open up the lines right now. It seems like most of you were bothered on some level by the 49ers draft. One of the lead stories on Cowherd's show today. John Lynch just reaches. It's like he's addicted to it. Okay. All right. And then all of the other comments, and many, many of you are aware of it. I think Grandy, who did the morning show, is hiding from me today because he was all over Instagram talking about how we're close. We're getting damn close to them having to take the draft away from Kyle and John.
Yeah,
we're going to take it away from them because they just don't know how to do it. And I'm sitting here thinking about the whole thing. I can't refute what many of you are saying. I literally can't. I can put my dukes up all I want, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the 49ers had a great draft, because in my opinion, that opinion can't be proven.
It can't exist.
Not yet.
Yep.
So that, I know this is intricate. I don't mind if anybody hated the draft, but stop telling people that you're right. You don't know yet. And at minimum, I would argue, and this is where I stand, I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, do we feel they've earned, I don't know, you don't want to wait till September before you lose your cookies all over the internet because the name, or even, quite frankly, it's not even the name. It's the little two letters or the one letter next to his name and the number. We got a round and we got a position.
Yep.
If they had picked a safety, would you all feel better? You don't know who he is. You don't even know a damn thing about that fourth round safety that you think you wanted. But you'd feel better, and then you'd tell Kyle and John that they're not incompetent, which I'd argue for a decade now they've proven they're not. They're not incompetent.
They're not incompetent, but maybe they're not good at drafting.
Maybe.
And, you shared that thing from per 36, which is a metric, and, they give them an A+ from 2017 till now, and it makes me kind of want to throw up a little bit because
Why?
An A+, they're the fourth highest rated team in drafting. I looked at some of their rankings and their grades, and I think it's laughable. So, but again, that's just a measurement, and they're entitled to their measurement and their opinion and all the rest of it.
The grade does go down if you siphon off 2017, 18, 19.
Oh, yeah.
The grade will go down. It doesn't go down as far as I know a lot of you negative Nellies would love for it to go, because and this is also just kind of, I don't know. I think depending on whatever sort of pair of glasses you want to put on, and we all put them on, right?
Yeah.
I skew positive. I'm over here like, y'all found a $53 million quarterback with the last pick in the draft. That's going to wipe away a lot of crap for me. On the other hand, I understand if you're stuck on, like their first round capital went out the door for 3 years. And that's a completely fair point. But I do think we tend to skew one way or the other, which is if you kind of come from that place of where you want to attack, you've got this list of bad draft picks that the 49ers have, and a lot of them are on the earlier half of the draft, and you run around with that piece of paper in your hand, and it totally ignores, like, a lot of obviously good, like, I don't know, one person hit me today, this was my favorite tweet of the day.
Yep.
They've covered up their bad drafting with roster construction. Please tell me I'm not the only one who sees the irony in the comment. They've covered up bad drafting with roster construction.
Right.
What the hell do you think the draft is?
Well, the draft is the draft. And then the roster construction is undrafted free agents. They've done very well. And trades, they've done pretty well. That, to me, is not the draft. If we want to just look at the draft.
Piece of it. It's clearly a piece of it.
I mean, trading for Trent Williams is not a piece of the draft. And trading for McCaffrey and, trading for Garoppolo, these are not part of the draft.
Right, but those are 3 players. Like 17 of 22 current starters were drafted.
And that's kind of a dubious stat.
Why?
And like 17 of 22, like, depends on who you consider to be a starter.
Well, sure. Like if you go to their 2 deep right now, which can change, like I'm going to acknowledge that. Like, but my point is it's not like the Niners are, for example, like the Giants. It's not like they're running around out there without anybody they drafted. That, like, come on. You'd agree with that.
No, you've got guys that you've drafted. Like, if you look at the O-line, you've got a center that I don't think that you drafted Brendel. You drafted Pooney, and you drafted
McKivitz.
You didn't draft Trent, and you didn't draft Juszczyk, if you count him as a starter.
Sure.
And you didn't draft McCaffrey, and you drafted Purdy, and Juwan, well, he's gone. But you got Pearsall and whoever the other wide receiver is, you didn't draft him, and on it goes. Kittle, sure. It just depends on how you look at it. And I was actually looking at, percentage of yards that were accumulated last year by guys you drafted versus guys you didn't draft.
Okay.
And, 92% of your rush yards were from guys you didn't draft. And
that's Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Christian. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
I mean, so you could look at it any number of different ways. I look at Seattle, and last year they had 86% of their rush yards from drafted guys, Charbonnet and Walker, and you had JSN, a drafted wide receiver. And so that's a team that I think is kind of the gold standard right now of drafting guys and winning the whole thing.
And they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
And if you go back to when the 49ers were in the Super Bowl 3 years ago and you went, how about your receiving yards then? How many of them were from drafted players? I bet it's like
almost all
damn
of it,
near almost all of it.
Other than McCaffrey, again,
Right, sure. But, from Kittle to Ayuk to Debo to Jennings, and Brock Purdy being the one who throws them the ball. Look, I mean, there's all kinds of good and bad. That's why what I was after, and you can hate the website, that's fine. It's like I don't even necessarily love it.
I don't hate it, but I'm looking at the 2022 draft class, Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
They get a B+, even though it's Samuel Womack, Drake Jackson, TDP, and Castro Fields.
The rest of the draft was very poor.
Awful.
Yeah.
So, but you get a B+ because you found a quarterback in the 7th round.
I think if you went to most GMs and said, "Look, screw your draft, but you're going to find your quarterback," I bet most of them would say, "Bring it."
Okay.
But whatever. I'm not here to cape up for this website. It's just a website. What I was after, and I don't know. Maybe you look at the website and we're still after this. What I really wanted to know was where does what the Niners do fit in the framework of all of the teams? Do they stand out as we're bad at this? Like we really and again, we're first round and then second round and Trey Lance and 7th round and 5th round and let's just put it all into a bucket and go, does it fit or not fit with what NFL teams do? And I think it's fair to say when you take that high of a view from 10,000 feet, the Niners are at minimum not out of whack. They do not stand out as bad at this. When you take the view of their whole regime, the whole decade and all the teams.
If they did, they would not be as good as they are.
Correct.
And if they were this good with that bad of a draft, then Kyle Shanahan's the best coach in the history of football.
Ever. Thank you.
Right.
I see now that, and
it's hard for me to break those two things apart, because if your draft is that bad, but you go to the playoffs that often and you go 12-5, then what are we even talking about here?
Well, I've said the same thing about Kyle when people talk about how crappy his quarterbacks always are. If you literally have found a coach, think about what you just said for a second. If the 49ers have found a coach who can continue to win in the NFL without a quarterback and without a draft, I would like to skip to the Hall of Fame right now and dedicate a whole wing to him. That's the best coach of all time, if I buy that idea. You can't draft well. You never have a good quarterback. It's just Kyle. Think about what you're saying.
Yep.
If that's how you feel.
It's not how I feel.
I know it's not.
I mean, I think the quarterback is good, but I think that the draft does leave a lot to be desired, and the draft is not as good as other teams' draft. And maybe if you drafted better, you'd already have a Lombardi, and you wouldn't have to worry about two drives from Patrick Mahomes that have cost you a chance to win the whole thing.
Look, there's no doubting the mistakes. I think one thing that does exist in today's world for the 49ers is they do at times pay a price for what they did with Trey Lance. They do. I don't know how to argue that. I hear a lot of people go, gosh, the 2023 draft was so bad. And it's like, well, it didn't start till the third round.
Right.
So, you're at a little bit of a deficit there. Whose fault is that? It's theirs.
Yeah.
But
and you took a kicker in the third round.
Right. Wouldn't have done that.
Right.
They probably wouldn't do it again either. Do you know what I mean? At that time, though, they were so good. Kyle has said this out loud. He's like, we're so good. Like, I kind of thought all we needed was a kicker.
Right.
But in general, I don't believe in the word reach, simply because of what it's based on. I think reach could exist, but it's based on Dane Brugler's website, as opposed to us actually knowing if there was another team 5 picks later that was going to take Stribling. And if that's who you really want, why would you take that risk? You've already dropped twice.
That's right.
In the draft. We were on the air when it happened. I wasn't in favor of it. I was surprised by it. But to me, once it's done, I have to at least have the stones to step back and go, well, now let's wait and see if they were right.
Exactly.
Because they might have been right.
And it might be a reach, and it might be the steal of the draft. We don't know yet, where that all will be until he actually goes out there and, plays football. And then we can kind of find out if it was a reach or an overreach, or if it was a bargain, the steal of the draft. Nobody knows.
They'll just tweet, wait and see.
That's not fun.
See how much engagement you get.
Exactly.